and welcome back to T-Dubs. My name is Kayo, and I'm with...
Peter, hi.
And we are doing this thing where we're watching all of Netflix's The Sandman, but instead of binging it, we're watching it 2 episodes at a time so that we can talk about it. And in this week's episodes, so you should know, this is like a rewatch podcast or a first-time viewing podcast, I guess, where we watch the entire series. So expect spoilers, especially for things that happened in the first few episodes. And today we are talking about...
We're at episodes 3 and 4.
It's kind of following more or less the same chapters pacing as the graphic novel.
Which I still haven't read, by the way.
And so you bring that up. We get to chapter 4, which is where they go to hell, right? They end up in hell. And I'm jumping ahead because we haven't talked about 3 yet. But that moment where they go to hell, that's where I gave up on the audiobook.
I see.
Yeah, and basically it was just too stressful or too emotionally draining is probably the better way to say it.
In the audiobook, you mean?
In the audiobook, to hear in-depth descriptions of hell and the surroundings and what was going on. So that's where I kind of quit because like it's rainy and dark these days. I didn't want to go through that. So just to give a picture of what happened and why I stopped reading the audiobook, this is why. And this will also be the moment where I really remember nothing.
So from this point moving forward, we're both walking into this blind.
Relatively blind. Like I might have some memories, some key moments that happened in the graphic novel, but again, they're like 12 years away for me. Like I really don't have any real idea of what happens except that I had a good time. Episode 3, if you watch our previous video about this, we talk about what we expect, what we liked, what we didn't like, questions that we had. Is it this? Is it that? And pretty much all of our questions that we discussed in our first episode get answered in episode 3. So you want to go through them one by one?
So the first one was, what's the deal with Joanna Constantine?
Is she gender swapped? Or is she from the past? Or is she the character from the past in the present? And what do you think?
So I think they really did gender swap John.
True gender swap. There's no question about it.
It was a real gender swap.
Borderline blasphemous. I actually like that character as a woman more.
Go on.
I don't know. I feel like a man being that brash. I mean, we're used to it, right? We're used to seeing brash men, but it was ironically a breath of fresh air to have Joanna Constantine be a woman with a lot of personal power. I think that it added an extra layer of texture to the story, an extra layer of the danger is to say diversity, right? I thought that the actress was fantastic. I thought that she didn't look like she was pretending to be John Constantine. She was Joanna Constantine.
I didn't feel her. Like, I personally felt that she could use a bit more oomph to her acting. John has this trauma, right, with what happened in Newcastle.
Okay.
It didn't feel like she had that trauma in her face. She was very made up. Mm-hmm. She looks prim and proper. And after she wakes up from her nightmares, it didn't feel like a really life-changing, traumatic nightmare. Do you get what I'm saying?
I get what you're saying, but I also read that as this nightmare is such a constant in her life. Like she's been living with this a long time. And I think it's almost like she's callous to it. Mm-hmm. That was my read on it. Right? Like, because it happens a lot where she just wakes up and she's bright-eyed. My interpretation of it was that here's this character that is so used to living in like their own personal hell that it doesn't affect them on the surface anymore.
There's another moment there when her friend, which I forgot her name. What was her name?
I don't remember. We're really bad at this.
Her old flame.
We are really bad at this name thing.
Her old flame who had the sand that Morpheus was looking for, one of Morpheus's relics, the sand, the helm, and the ruby. and this sand is draining her. It put her in this kind of a coma state where it's only
Yeah.
the sand that's keeping her alive.
It's both draining her and keeping her alive at the same time.
Right.
So it's like it's too much power.
Joanna basically told Morpheus like, "Oh, so you really wanna save humanity? Well, here she is." And
Yeah.
Joanna, that's not a thing that John might have done in the comics, because John probably would have just accepted the death of his friend, or would probably view the death as, "Oh, woe is me, another friend of mine has died." But this one, Joanna is still pretty much attached to her friend.
She
So
she
that,
has more of a humanity to her.
yeah. But I get what you're saying, that Joanna is an entirely new character here in the TV series, that she's her own person, and that's great. I like her the way she is, but I don't want to look at her in a lens that this is John's replacement. This is supposed to be John.
So just forget John is
Just
what you're saying.
forget John.
I can agree with that. I think that kind of the benefit of having Joanna respond that way, the way that she does, is that she's a character that really anchors that episode, right? Because Morpheus doesn't really have a lot of emotion that you can read into or attach to, and he shouldn't. Her kind of having to force him to act, right? Having to introduce humanity because she is the human. Yes, you are absolutely right. We probably shouldn't treat it as a gender swap at all. She's a new character, kind of this, have some similar traits to John Constantine, and that allows for the reactions to be the same. But it also doesn't make sense to take this opportunity and squander it of just having it be a raw gender swap, right? Just a woman reading the man's lines, acting it like she was the man. You need to bring something extra to it and ask the question, what are the things that this character can do now that she is Joanna Constantine
Right.
instead of John Constantine? I really appreciated that. So that was the first question that we asked. What would happen to Joanna Constantine? We also talked about the bird, right?
Right.
About Jessamy, and turns out
Did you like the
completely
new
different
one?
bird.
Yeah.
I prefer that silent bird a lot more. I like the character of Michael. He's an interesting character.
Is it Michael or Matthew? I think it's
Sorry,
Matthew.
Matthew. Sorry. See, terrible with the name thing. I like Matthew as a character. I know we only saw a little bit of Jessamy, but I think I like Jessamy more. That might just be the mystery of Jessamy. And Matthew just talks too much, says the man, talking for 20 minutes on a single TV show.
I liked Matthew.
You like
I
Matthew.
preferred Matthew over Jessamy because Matthew's presence, or Matthew himself, grounds Morpheus into the waking realm in such a way that here's this guy, here's this bird who was formerly a human, who knows exactly how humans operate, how humans feel,
Yeah.
and he's been educating Morpheus on how he should act towards humanity's problems.
He pushes back on Morpheus.
Yeah.
Right? In a way that Jessamy never would. Like, Jessamy is very much like the loyal and faithful companion, right? And Michael gets sent on a mission and doesn't even try, right? In the end of episode 4, right? Before the big battle. And Morpheus asks him to do something. And he just says, "No, I'm going to stay right here."
Yeah.
Right? Which is something I think would never happen with Jessamy. And I am enjoying it. Don't get me wrong. I am enjoying the bird. I am liking that there is a bird, but I like Jessamy.
I think Jessamy and Matthew both met Morpheus at the perfect moment of his life.
For that.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
that particular moment. He needs Matthew. He needs a Matthew kind of Raven at this exact point of his career.
And so that brings us mostly to episode 4, which for the most part takes place in hell. Right? We see there are other plots that are developing, but following our protagonist, which is Morpheus, we find ourselves in hell, walking through hellish landscapes and seeing a very different hell from what we're used to seeing in other portrayals.
Yeah.
And um, that's a really different way of dealing with fear. Like you get to experience fear through a bird that doesn't want to fly. And the thing that I didn't like about the book was that it described hell in too much detail. And here we get to see it in like these wide shots, right? Where we get to see like burning pits of fire and stuff like that. And then we eventually find ourselves at the battle between Lucifer and Morpheus, which was, again, a completely different way of addressing fear, right?
Yeah.
And the battle between maybe good and evil, but definitely the battle against pure evil,
Yeah.
right? Because it's still very unclear whether or not the Sandman is good. He's our protagonist. We are rooting for him. It moves the story forward, but we don't know if he's good or not.
Uh,
He's just an entity.
I also like how their battle was basically just like a grander version of my dad is better than your dad. They're just one upping one another.
It
Essentially.
yes, 100%.
That was great.
I like that Lucifer changes clothes for the battle. There's no real explicable reason.
John
What
also, Morpheus also changes
he
clothes.
does? Oh yeah,
Yeah.
he does.
It
He
changed to some
does.
leather thing, similar to what Lucifer was wearing.
But it's harder to tell because Lucifer is wearing this big white Filipiniana thing in the
Yeah.
beginning, and then he swaps out, and then you expect that there's gonna be some battle, like, oh, we're gonna go down to the fiery pit and duke it out there, and basically they just start talking, and it builds up a lot of tension, right? Especially in the beginning where you only see very minor effects
Yeah.
of the attacks. And you never really see Lucifer really suffer the way that Morpheus suffers from the attacks. And then you get this really great moment where the bird drops in and he says, what was the line? Dreams don't die.
Yeah.
To portray dreams as hope is something that we haven't really seen in literature so much, because we usually see dreams as like storytelling, right? But that word dream is used also in day to day life, right? In things that we can control. We were talking last week, again, the other question that we asked was, are they going to get all three MacGuffins, right? Which is the helm, the sand, and the ruby. And we basically see them all come into the Sandman's possession, come into Morpheus's possession within, by the time we get to the end of episode 4. But and what we also see is kind of the effects of what those three things do, because we never really got them explained. So we see that the sand is like the power to transport and to shape, right? The helm is vision, so the ability to find and to see. And then the ruby is the thing that makes dreams come true. It's very interesting from a literary point of view that Morpheus has a realization of the power of hope at the same moment as he is coming into, or the same kind of window of opportunity as he is coming to return to his ruby, or the ruby's coming to return to him.
I think he already knew that just because there's a clear distinction between dreams and nightmares. Yeah, back in episode 1, Morpheus has been saying that you're a nightmare. And
That's true.
He's been very clear about the distinction between dreams and nightmares. And going back to Matthew, here's one of those moments wherein we see how much Morpheus needed someone like Matthew in his life, someone to remind him of what he is, who he is, and what he stands for.
The reality is, anything at some point in the future could happen. As long as there is something after, there will always be hope, right?
And if Morpheus didn't realize that, he would have died right there at Lucifer's feet
Yeah.
and doom everything.
Yeah, and we would have millions of people having dream problems forever. And
Okay, so one last thing from me. who was that woman in hell? The Morpheus's former lover.
Yeah.
Did that happen in the comics?
I don't remember that at all. Like that was like a solid like 3 minutes where I'm just staring. I'm like, oh no, what happened? He's like, yes I what is it? Yes I love you or something. Yes I still love you, but I didn't forgive you yet.
Yeah. And I'm like, what was this all about?
Yeah, and like he changes persona, right?
Yeah.
He becomes like an African.
Yeah, like what he was 10,000 years ago.
I thought that maybe they might be like the great ancestors, for lack of a better term, Adam and Eve, right?
Yeah.
And it's a discussion of or like original sin. But that's a thought I had. I never got it confirmed in the show, so I can't say that this is what that is. But I think that a show like this, which again, shocking production value, right? That moment where they pull up the gates of hell with a pentagram on the gate, the blood's rushing out, like,
Oh, now you like doors too, like me in the previous.
oh my god,
That
like
big door was awesome.
that big door was awesome. And you know what? Looks better than anything in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, that shot where the gate already opened,
Yeah.
and then Morpheus was standing there with Matthew. This is the light. It kind of looked like one of the old posters for The Crow. Remember that poster?
Yeah, but it also looks, now that you mention it, it actually looks like a frame from the Sandman. With like they're walking through and then the bird's there.
Yeah,
So it must be one of
I think
those
it's one of
frames
those
again.
famous
Yeah, one of those
pictures.
famous frames.
Yeah.
What do you think happens from here on out? What's the name of the escaped convict? The child of
John.
John. So why did John give up the amulet of protection? Right? Like, does the ruby just do something more powerful, or right? Like he says, I have this thing, I don't need that. But if that was true, why did the mom need the amulet of protection to begin with? So there's all this weird stuff going
Here's
on.
the point that I need to make a confession. I already watched episode 5.
Oh man.
But I am saving all of my comments about episode 5 later.
Okay.
This is what happened. Me and my girlfriend watched episodes 3 and 4,
Yeah.
but she was itching to watch episode 5 because of a cliffhanger in 4, which is basically John getting hold of the ruby.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, sure, let's sit through this. That's
Okay.
all I'm going to say about episode 5. But what I can tell you, though, because you asked the question,
No, don't answer the question.
No. It's not about any details about the episode 5.
All right, sure,
I'm just
sure,
going to say that it does get better.
All right. Okay. Yeah. So that's what I hear is that
Yeah.
it definitely gets better. Episode 5 is where it really gets intense.
Do you personally like your journey so far? with
Oh
it?
yeah. I've really been loving it. There's also this problem of it being very gloomy and dreary in Manila right now because of the weather. We have very dark days and lots of rain. And so I don't know if I want to look at the TV and watch something that's blue and gray and dark all the time. But at the same time, it's so entertaining. It's
Also,
so
counterpoint,
Yeah.
it added to the immersion. When I watched it and it was raining, it added to the immersion. I felt like I was there, and that made me enjoy it more.
That's true. That's true. So if you can enjoy it, you will definitely enjoy it more. I tend to not want to watch things that are potentially dark and depressing in times that are dark and depressing. All that said, we're kind of going into year 3 of everything being dark and depressing. So
that's it for our discussion for The Sandman episodes 3 and episode 4. Tune in next week for our discussions for episodes 5 and 6. Click subscribe and leave a comment down below what you think of what your own takes on the episodes are. And have you already watched The Sandman? If you haven't, please go ahead and watch it. And for Kayo Show, I'm Peter, and we'll see you next week.